Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to the Overreaction Monday show on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. This video brought to you by the amazing people at rogueshop.com. Go check out the website. Make your life a little bit better. Get you some Rogue. Find any of the products that will make your life a little bit better. They're everywhere. Anxiety, sleeplessness, pain, you name it, they can help you. We may need some of that ourselves today. I hate to channel our immediate Shador Sanders Anwar, but for those of you coming into the video, I promise you there won't be a big quarterback controversy. We let our guy Tyler handle the thumbnail and the title today, and well, there is a lot to get into. In fact, Anwar, I do have a hot Monday take that takes us into, it doesn't take us to the point of controversy, but I think it takes us to the point of conversation. Just to reset, Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers out week to week, seems to be out this week as he tries to get back from a strained stomach. Arch Manning, much to the nation's as a whole excitement, is the starting quarterback for the Longhorns this week as they get ready for La Monroe. We anticipate. And let the conversations begin.
Catch a good. The irony is that a kid from Louisiana gets to make his first start against a Louisiana school. So, I mean, maybe that'll come up in conversation. I don't know how much he paid attention to La Monroe growing up, but maybe there's a cool part as far as that is concerned. But this is this thing of the arch mania that we're getting ready to deal with over the next upcoming weeks. It's going to be interesting, Catch, because I don't think it's like anything anyone has ever seen. And I was trying to think of comparisons, and when we start, there may be guys, Catch, who have been notable 5 stars, right? And maybe guys who've had names. I totally get that that's happened in the future, but not a legacy name. Like when you start talking about the first families of sports, right? You start talking about like the Hulls in hockey, or you start talking about the Mannings in football. Like this is different. This is maybe like the Griffeys in baseball, right? And there's probably some better examples than that, right? But this is next level. This is not just a normal 5-star guy. This is someone 5-star plus. His uncles literally do a show on ESPN on Monday Night Football that, quite honestly, is I think more entertaining than the actual show. Like they're like host Saturday Night Live. Like these are like celebrities. So it'll be interesting because this entire week. That's what everyone in the college football world is going to talk about. Every media outlet is going to be looking for the clicks. And it'll be the conversation. And then he plays La Monroe and he's going to put up fantastic numbers. So it's going to be a hellified week, or a couple of weeks when it's all said and done. You and I kind of have embracing ourselves for this moment, Catch. But I think you and I thought, you and I kind of thought that it could happen this year. Because we always knocked on wood as relates to Quinn, but we kind of understood the reality that whatever reasons, he's always been a little unfortunate as far as the injuries are concerned. But this becomes a thing that you and I have kind of been telling people, like, this could happen. Well, here we are.
There's so many layers to this. Let's start with the absolute most positive layer, which is, I think the 2025 Longhorns, which were, oh, by the way, the Longhorns are now number 1 in the country.
Yeah, there's that. Oh, yeah. First time since when? First time since when, Catch? What's the number?
2008, since the regular season. So right after they beat Oklahoma. The 2025 Longhorns will be better off because Arch will go through whatever he's going to go through over the course of the next week or two, even though it's La Monroe, even though it might be Mississippi State. It's a chance for Arch to get some reps under his belt so that a year from now, he won't be making his first start. I mean, there are some unintended and positive consequences here. I think this is all very good for Arch Manning's development. It's not great for Quinn Ewers' I think Heisman campaign. I think that it'll end up being okay, that missing a couple of games isn't ideal, but he gets Oklahoma and Georgia in consecutive weekends in October. And trust me, there's nothing that missing a couple of games, those games hurting his campaign, can get fixed pretty quickly with a couple of badass performances against Oklahoma and Georgia. And let's be honest, if those performances don't happen, the Heisman campaign was probably going to take a back step anyway. There's the Arch Quinn thing is incredibly fascinating because on one hand, you have a quarterback that could end up being the number 2 quarterback in the history of the program by this end of the season. If Texas wins a national championship, and man, let me just say this. I don't even think this is an overreaction. Texas looks like the best team in the country. Their talent pops every 5 seconds. Their backups to the starters are sometimes better than the starters. This is an insanely talented team that Steve Sarkeesian has put together in short order, and they are absolutely deserving of the number 1 ranking. I'm a little surprised that so many people flipped on Georgia with that performance against Kentucky and then put all of the weight towards Texas. I'm a little caught off guard. It's the right thing to do, I think. If it were me, I said this on Saturday, I already had Texas ranked ahead of Georgia, but here we are. Texas number 1 in the country. They've got a quarterback in Quinn Ewers. I still can't get over what it must have been like to have been Quinn. It's his presence that has fast forwarded this Steve Sarkeesian renaissance that gets Texas to number 1. They cannot do it without Quinn Ewers. And yet he's on the sideline, he's on the tent. And look, I got messages. I don't want to dime anybody out, but I did get messages from people who know Quinn, who were even around the family this weekend. And it was like, yeah, man, it sucked. He feels the Arch thing, that for all of their friends and they get along and they wish each other well. They do. Arch and his success this weekend will be celebrated by Quinn. He's a good dude, but he wouldn't be human to not feel that there's a thing that happens when Arch steps on the field. And I'd give Quinn Ewers some truth serum, and I'd love for him to be able to truly talk about it. I had somebody this week, and it's the reason why I wrote my column on War, my 10 thoughts from the weekend. If you want to go check it out, I navigated this tricky, the fans love Arch Manning. And I had a source tell me, unrelated source, this is just a buddy of mine, who was telling me that when Arch comes on the field and when Arch makes a play, the stadium just hits different. The sound just sounds different. The roar is a roar and not just a roar. He called it the Arch effect. Arch comes on the field and Texas fans don't even realize how loud they can be until they start cheering for Arch. I had a source message me yesterday. Not really a source, just an Orange Bloods poster that just knows some people. And he was like, Quinn Ewers loves Texas, and Texas loves Arch Manning. And I thought, I don't even know if that's true, but that is some cold-blooded shit, man. And here we are. It's one of the dynamics of, on one hand, you're missing your Heisman leading starting quarterback on Saturday. And on the other hand, Arch Manning gets to start a football game. And I think there will be, part of it is the La Monroe part on War, but I think there will be more excitement than there will be trepidation. Nobody will go into the stadium thinking, oh man, if Arch doesn't play well enough, we might lose the number 1 ranking. I think people go to the stadium on Saturday ready for a party, and it's just an insane little conversation to have to navigate, that somehow the backup quarterback just happens to be a Manning, and Texas fans, they like nice things. Say what you want to about Texas fans. They don't like to rummage in the gutter. They like nice things. They like, Texas fans like it when people call them rich. It's the richest program. Nothing feels more wealthy than having Arch Manning as your backup quarterback. And all of the, well, you should love the starter and look at what Quinn is doing. You cannot control the way people love people. Like how fans feel about guys, you can't control. You can't make a fan base love somebody more than somebody else. Very organically, they just have this love affair with Arch Manning, and everything else is collateral damage. It's nothing is going to get in the way of Texas fans enjoying Arch Manning in their program. It makes them feel like they have something that nobody else in college football has, and it's true. And it was wild Saturday to, on one hand, the starting quarterback is hurt, and on the other hand, the backup quarterback is this guy. And oh, by the way, when he came in, he was really badass. Like, I know it was just UTSA, but he put together an and one mixtape in about 15 minutes of game time. And, here we are.
I mean, it goes in what the South End Zone Queen is saying in her super chat. She said, I feel bad for Quinn. Had he showed up in every way for us, especially big games. He gets hurt and the crowd goes wild as soon as Arch goes in. Hashtag respect Quinn. Yeah, I mean, Quinn was literally in the medical tent. So when you're in the tent, they pull it over you. You can't, you walk in the tent, you can't really see what's going on. You're just in this tent. You can hear everything that's going on though. And so you got to be thinking, if you're Quinn, man, I'm hurting right now. I got this injury. It's really bad. And the stadium is going crazy. And you got to be thinking, the kid must have did something again. And you hear the, and now you're like, so all of a sudden your tent shaking and everything. And you got to be thinking, oh, all right, well, hope everybody's having a good time. I'm just in here suffering. Hope everyone's enjoying themselves. glad you guys are having a good time. I mean, I'm trying to be a team player here, but this is a little BS. But go ahead and enjoy yourself. I'll be okay. I'll be fine. Let me go into the locker room and put my black hoodie on it and come on out. So it is.
You ever been sick on War, and your kids will have something else planned, and then you realize how quickly they move on without you? Like it's like, ex-wife or a friend or a mom or somebody's going to take the kids to go do something, and you feel like crap, and deep down you just want everybody to be thinking about how you don't feel well. And it's like, sorry, Dad, going to the movies.
Yep.
You want so badly for everybody to just be focused on you. I just think it's important to acknowledge the elephant in the room, that it's a conversation that people will tap dance around. And we just need to acknowledge that it exists. And it's weird that Quinn is the Texas guy and Arch is from Louisiana. And yet the Texas crowd can't help itself. It seems to have an affinity for Arch. Not that they don't for Quinn, right? It's not one versus the other. But when you look at one versus the other, it is amazing how Texas fans can't control their lust and passion for Arch. And it's okay. I don't want to shame Texas fans into saying you shouldn't act this way, that somehow you're wrong for being this excited. Because I can remember, look, when Cedric Benson first showed up in the class of 2000, he didn't really get into the game until the fourth quarter. But every time they would show him on the Jumbotron, and when he did come into the game, there was a roar that was different. Same thing happened with Vince Young, that in the early stages of his career, he wasn't ready for prime time. But if he came onto the field, there was just an anticipation of what might happen. I think Arch is better, way better than Vince was at this point in Vince's career. You could justifiably say Vince shouldn't play. It's the reason why he lost the starting job to Chance Mock. He wasn't ready. As a redshirt freshman, Arch is ahead of Vince. And part of the thing, Anwar, part of the reason why this thing is so, whatever adjective we want to use to describe whatever this is, Arch is really good. He just is. You can see that, oh my God, this guy, whenever it does become his team, this guy's going to be something else. I mean, the expectation already exists that he'll eventually be the number one overall quarterback drafted when he does come out. The expectation already exists that this guy will play in the NFL for a long time. He's going to be great. That's the expectation. But to see it with your eyes, it started with a little bit of playing time a year ago. It was like, that was kind of exciting. Now you've seen it through the first couple of games of this season as he kind of evolves and becomes a player who's used to the speed of the game, the competition, the players around him. He was sensational on Saturday, and I'd be lying if I said I can't wait to see what he looks like against La Monroe. He just happens to be quarterbacking the number one team in the country on Saturday, and there are different levels of stakes to the performance, but La Monroe is La Monroe. Texas will throttle them. I guess the conversation ultimately is, when will Quinn get back? I think it's a wait and see deal. If anybody says for certain, oh, he'll be back against Mississippi State or he'll be back against Oklahoma, I just think they're kind of talking out of their ass a little bit. That, like, he literally just got checked out by a doctor yesterday. It was just 2 days ago that he felt unwell enough that he couldn't finish the game. This is the kind of injury that's going to take some time. He needs a little bit of rest. It could be as simple as he returns against Mississippi State, so it's a 1 week deal, or they could look at the bye week. He could say, I don't feel right. And the last thing you want to do is have that guy come back early, aggravate the injury, and now maybe you're compromising Oklahoma and Georgia. So, the bad news is Quinn Ewers needs some time to let his body heal. We need to let him heal. And in the meantime, the Arch Manning experience will be what it is. And Texas fans are just going to have to juggle both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, I think the thing, to me, the smart approach to this catch for a Texas fan is to say Arch is getting meaningful reps that will set you up for success in 2025. And nothing more than that. And I think anything more than that is going overboard. Like, it's going overboard. Quinn is the quarterback that Texas needs for the 2024 season. I've had a lot of takes that since Catch and I started doing these videos damn near 10 years ago, when it was just you and I and the tumbleweeds, and we were in all this space, Catch. And it was me who, I think it was either a year or two ago, stood on the table, and I was like, Quinn Ewers is never going to have another bad game again. And he's like, what? I was like, he'll never have another bad game again. That's how good he was, because getting caught up in the moment, right? Getting caught up in the emotions, I'm like, he'll never have one. You are crazy. And guess what? The reality is, young quarterbacks are going to young quarterback. Like, that's just how it's going to be. I don't care what the last name is. Young quarterbacks are going to young quarterback. Look, Catch, all we got to do is look at the landscape of young quarterbacks. Manning is Manning, right? Look at what Oklahoma is going through with a young quarterback. He's a 5-star, but look at what Oklahoma is going through. Look at Texas A&M. They may say to themselves, you know what? we may not need Connor at this moment. Like, we might be better as an offense without him. Like, we can go through, we've talked about Cade Klubnik, and he still has gone through some growing pains. Like, I go through the list of the 5 stars over the last few years, and there still are growing pains that are associated with it. So when you're Texas, Catch, and you're at the point where you're the number 1 team in the country, you got a chance to legit compete for a national championship. Now's not the time to tinker. Now's not the time to get fancy. Now's not the time to say, oh, yes, he's great. He'll be fantastic when he fills in. He'll be fantastic in 2025 and 2026. But once you get past that, Catch, you got to say you need Quinn back. You need him to be healthy. You need that guy to be there in all the big games. Because like I said, young QBs are going to young QB. I say enjoy UTSA. I say enjoy La Monroe. If Sark holds him out against Mississippi State, because God knows they're a horrible team.
Not a good football team.
They're not good. No disrespect to Toledo, even though that's somewhat of a disrespect to Toledo.
Toledo beat them so bad, they were like, man, they really aren't good, are they? Like,
it's so bad. So I know we got a quick super chat that we need to get to, but the good news is Texas has 2 really good quarterbacks, and so that beats what we've seen before. But the other part is you also have to have a point where I think Texas fans used to be so happy to have a quarterback that flashed. You're like, we'll take that. We'll take that. Gerard Hurd flashed against Cal. We'll absolutely take that off of what we had before. And then it was like, he flashed. Okay, let's take that. I think Texas has a really good starting quarterback and a really good backup, and it's okay to stay with the starter. Let's just knock out the super chat real quick so we can get back on top.
Sure.
Our main man, T. Tracy, he goes, the attendance versus UTSA was 1,001,892. With Arch being the starter versus La Monroe, will the attendance pass 103,000?
Yes. The biggest winner over the weekend was the secondary ticket market, because I'm guessing you could have got into La Monroe for about $15. And now everybody will get closer to face value for La Monroe than they were previously going to. It becomes a game that people are going to want to go to. People are going to want to say, I was at the stadium the night Arch Manning made his first start in a Texas uniform. Yes, Tracy, I think the crowd will be higher. I wouldn't be surprised that other than Georgia, this might be the highest attendance game all season long.
There's some decent price tickets here, Catch. I'm looking here right now. I'll put it on the screen. Not bad. Not a bad price. There are some seats available, but
there are going to be seats available. I'm just saying that it goes from being a game where you were literally giving your tickets away.
Yeah, true.
The value got saved a little bit.
Yeah.
This is one of those games where it's like, hey, I've got 4 tickets. Anybody want to pay? You post that on Orange Bloods. I got 4, section 8. Anybody want them? And people are like, I might stay home and watch that this weekend. We'll see. I'm just saying you can't get. All right, so I have the closest thing to a hot take that involves the quarterbacks.
Okay, hold on. Before you go to that, let's knock out another super chat real quick from Buck Wild. Hold that. Without a quarterback, the overwhelming majority of P4 programs would take an injured Quinn over their current starter. Quinn is still our guy. Texas loves Quinn. Wow.
I don't think there are 10 programs in America that would take their starting quarterback over Arch Manning, let alone Quinn, right? I mean, duh. I think once you get beyond the top 5 or 6 schools in America, Arch Manning would start for everybody in America except for the top group of teams who have like an upperclassman quarterback at their disposal. He'd start at Ohio State right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No offense to their K-State transfer, but there are very few quarterbacks, I think, in America that in year 2, Arch isn't purely a kid anymore. We talked about it during the offseason. This is the time when 5-star quarterbacks typically take over. Vince Young, in the history of 5-star quarterbacks ranked in the top 5 in the country overall as prospects, Vince Young waited a season and a half before he became the starting quarterback. And that's the longest that any starting quarterback has ever waited, or any 5-star quarterback with that type of pedigree has ever waited. And Arch signed up this season to take it to 2 seasons. He'll wait till the beginning of year 3 to officially become the starting quarterback. Okay, here's my hot take. Quinn Ewers is ahead of Arch Manning. And the reason why in all of the biggest games this season, you want Quinn to be the starter is because he has all of that experience built up. There are very few times in life where you get a guy who's in his 3rd year as a starting quarterback. He hasn't left for the NFL. He's gone through the fire of playing in Tuscaloosa and playing in Ann Arbor and even going to places like Manhattan, Kansas. And he's played in a couple of Texas OU games. He has all of this experience. And in the big games, you want to be able to lean on that. You want that guy on the field because the moment won't be too big for him. And one of the things we don't know yet about Arch Manning is if he were to go to Ann Arbor or to Tuscaloosa or an environment like that, would the moment be too big right now while he's still a teenager, while he's still in the infancy of his college football career? Who's to say? We don't know. That being said, that qualification out of the way, that look, Quinn is the guy, it's his team, and you want to lean on that experience more than raw talent in the biggest games of this season. I don't know. I think Quinn Ewers is better than Arch Manning. I think right now. But I don't know that. I don't know because there's this weird sliding doors thing that's taking place on War where I think Quinn Ewers is going to be a 1st-round draft pick. Hell, he finishes this season strongly. Who knows? Maybe he ends up being the number 1 overall pick. I don't know. But I don't know that I quite think of him that way. I do with Arch. I think Arch in time is going to be better than Quinn Ewers. I think he's more athletic. I think there are some things that Quinn does better than Arch, but I think there will be the totality of the Arch package. I think if I was buying stock in the 2 players, long-term stock, I think I would buy Arch. I thought the gap between the 2 was fairly narrow before the season started. Arch is better. I mean, Quinn is better, but the talent inside the 2 is close. And, you know, if Arch Manning were the starting quarterback at Texas right now, I think they're probably undefeated. I don't think Michigan suddenly wins that game because Arch Manning plays. I think Arch starts for 95% of the teams in the country right now. Texas isn't one of them, but I don't know that the gap between the 2 is significant. And if you took the experience and the seniority away, which you can't, that's part of what makes Quinn right now, I think the gap is potentially even smaller. So while I 100% agree this is Quinn's team, he needs to be the starter the entire year, I don't know. Capital K, capital N, capital O, capital W. I don't know that he's better than Arch Manning. I don't.
All right, let's knock out 2 more super chats and we'll come back to that topic there. Tom G says, does the La Memorial game get moved to a better ESPN channel, not ESPN Plus? Number 1 team in the country, Arch making a first career start. Come on, Disney, be better than that.
I mean, I know they wish they could, but they can't. They can't take whatever game is on ESPN and go, you guys just got moved to the JV.
No, yeah. At the end of the day, if you're ESPN, you handle this the right way, which is you put Arch on all your socials. He's on all your programming. You cut in to whatever game that is and show Arch making his 5th touchdown, right? Hey, what's going on down there in Austin? Oh, thanks, everybody. Arch Manning, 5th touchdown in the first half. Here he is on a 99-yard touchdown run. Looks like he clocked about 23 miles per hour, faster than Tyreek Hill. Like, you just go to that. But at the end of the day,
was that the most ridiculous stat of the weekend?
Yeah, I know that he was that close to Tyreek.
He ran faster on Saturday night than Tyreek Hill did at any point last season, which is not to say he's faster than Tyreek Hill. It just means he ran faster than Tyreek Hill did during the 2022 season or 2023 season.
I just keep going back to, I pointed this out on Twitter. I'll continue to point this out here. Everyone just has to realize that is Cooper Manning's son.
You're going to keep fighting the good fight.
I'm going to keep fighting the good fight because everyone's like, man, Peyton and Eli never looked like that. That's right. If we just go genetics, Cooper Manning was a damn good receiver. He was a receiver catch, which means he was pretty fast, which means athletic. He got a scholarship, right? So Cooper Manning, outside before the spinal stenosis hits, was a really good athlete. So of course he's going to have a son who's a really good athlete. Like, yes, he breaks the Manning mold because Cooper is his dad. I'll keep saying that. I'll keep
Cooper
saying,
may be watching. You're damn right, Anwar. Say it louder for the people in the back.
Like, I used to be good. I used to be somebody. You know, like, it's y'all forget about me, but I was better than my brothers at one point. I just had some stupid little injury that hit me, man. Y'all give me some respect. Cooper probably is like, I love Anwar. Super chat, another one from One More Chance. Maybe give me one more chance. Biggie, give me one more chance. 5-star Malachi Nelson waiting to be the starter. I mean, Catch, I guess what he's getting to is that you were talking about where, you know, the Texas room is right now, and he mentions Malachi Nelson. Any thoughts on that?
Not all 5-stars are the same. And I think you guys hear me talk about super blue chips, and you hear me talk about the math associated with the guys that make it versus the guys that don't. You know, Malachi Nelson was ESPN's #1 rated player when he came out, but he was number 14 on Rivals. He was number 13 on 24/7. On3 had him ranked number 30 overall. They still had him as a 5-star, but at the back end of the 5 stars, it's different when a guy's closer to a 6-star, the mythical, it doesn't even exist, 6-star, than the regular old run-of-the-mill 5 stars. The run-of-the-mill 5 stars will hit at the quarterback position 60, 70% of the time. The guys where Arch and Quinn are ranked and Caleb Williams are ranked typically hit about 90% of the time when it comes to being an NFL drafted quarterback. More times than not, it means they end up being top of the draft in the NFL type guys. You know, it's one of the things I keep talking about with Arch. He was the #1 overall guy in a recruiting class by multiple services. When that happens, what they're saying before he ever plays a down of college football, and look, this is true of Quinn Ewers as well, the expectation is that that guy will be the #1 overall player in the NFL draft when he comes out. That's what that ranking implies. So, you know, that's a little different than Malachi Nelson, with all due respect, who's obviously at his 2nd school, headed to a 3rd school. It feels like Malachi Nelson's going to end up being one of those anomalies, the 5-star quarterbacks. And look, he's still young. Maybe he figures it all out, but it certainly feels like he's headed in one direction, and it's not in the direction he wants to be headed in. Arch Manning is not Malachi Nelson.
Hey, can I just go through something real quick? And I know there's a super chat here. Do you mind if we just go through something as we start talking about 5 stars? Can I put something on the screen and you just explain some certain things to me? So I don't know how this looks, what is on the screen. Should I make that bigger? Can I make that bigger a little bit?
If you can, because I sure as hell can't see it.
Okay. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm looking here at the 2021, right? So Quinn's a 5-star. Block Vandergrift has kind of been a jag, aka almost a bust for the most part. Sam Hurd was a 5-star. He hasn't really done much. He's at Utah now at this moment, right? So those are your 2021. And I know what you say, like the hit rate, right? So let's go to dual threat. All right. So if I go to dual threat, you've got Caleb Williams, who's obviously, and then you've got Ty Thompson. Has he hit at all? Have I missed something?
No, and part of the deal with that guy is that Oregon, it's kind of the Oklahoma deal where like the transfers come in and skip the line. So,
Okay.
Ty Thompson got Dylan Gabriel.
So I've got 2. Let me go to 2022, right? I'll go 2022.
Real quick, go back to that list though, because I do think it's important. Let's not ignore the fact that although not 5 stars, 3 of the top 5 guys in the dual threat are mega hits. Caleb Williams started in the NFL last night. Jalen Milroe, Heisman finalist a year ago, starting quarterback on a top 3 team. And then Jackson Dart, way down there at 107, is the starting quarterback at Ole Miss and a Heisman candidate in his own right. So, interesting to see those names. I thought, and their rankings aren't nearly as high as, Jackson Dart at 107 is quite the impact player for that ranking. It would seem to me he was greatly undervalued. I had Jalen Milroe ranked as a 5-star. So rivals do better next time when it comes to guys that I think are obviously 5 stars. Milroe having played much closer to a 5-star ranking or at a 5-star ranking level than his ranking. Okay, so if you go to 22.
So let me go 22 pro guys. So 2022, they've got Cade, who's been just okay. You've got Walker Howard, who hasn't really done anything. These are your pro style guys. And it ain't not much past that. I mean, you got Malik Murphy way down there at 129, right? So so not much there. I think I already did the dual threat guys. Let me see if I already did dual threat. I feel like I did. So you got no 5 stars. And again, Connors was the highest rated of those quarterbacks as a dual threat guy than a bunch of other guys who are filling in.
Yeah, those guys are so low that they're 1 in 4 at best kind of connect rates. So not a strong dual threat class in 2020.
Definitely not a strong dual threat class of 2023. So then if I go to pro,
although the top guy, just to be fair, Johnson doing a good job at Kansas State, but
yes. And then you've got Arch, and then you got Nico as well. And there's some other names that are thrown in. Here's your list of 5 stars here. You got Arch, you've got Nico, Dante Moore, Malachi Nelson, Jackson Arnold. At this point, you only want one of them at this moment?
Oh no, Nico's starting for
Nico. I'm sorry, I forgot about Nico.
And Dante Moore, I think, is going to be a fantastic player. He transfers out of UCLA because he wanted to slow things down. The UCLA threw him on the field as a true freshman, which is not what he wanted. So he got the hell out of there. I think Dante Moore is going to end up being a fantastic player. Malachi Nelson is the guy out of that group that I kind of do a shoulder shrug over. I think Jackson Arnold eventually Jackson Arnold's going to be a really good player for Oklahoma. But this goes back to the conversation of what I was talking about. Not all 5 stars are created equal. He doesn't deserve, just because he's a 5-star and technically has the same ranking, he's not the same as those quarterbacks at the top, not coming out. And look, the thing about Arch is Arch showed us this is what it looks like when a future number 1. The thing that I keep saying about Arch, and I can't stress this enough, he's the same as Colin Simmons. He's the same as John Tate Cook. You can just name any of these 5-star guys. You can see them in real time getting better. I watched Colin Simmons the other night, and I thought, well, that guy's turning into the best player on that Texas defense. You wouldn't have said that even 2 weeks ago. But after his performance at Michigan and now the performance against UTSA, you can see it. This is what it looks like when these five-star guys figure it out. It oftentimes just takes a little bit of time, and you can see it with the naked eye. Like, oh my God, this guy is spreading his wings and turning into a player. We're looking at Arch Manning, a guy who ultimately is predicted and projected to one day be the number one overall pick in an NFL draft. This is what it looks like when the light switch starts to flicker on. The point that you make, Anwar, and I think it can't also be stressed enough, he's going to have young guy moments. He's going to have a game. If he were to start the rest of the season, there's a moment this season where he has a bad game. It happens to young players. It happened to Quinn. It usually happens on the road. You go to a place like Stillwater, and for whatever reason, things just go haywire a little bit. I think one of the things, if you're Texas, that you hope is that you're able to get some development in Arch this season that mitigates some of the, he's got to go to Columbus next year, right? So how does he fare in a game like that? Well, at least getting a few starts under his belt prepares him better than the idea of, okay, he's just going to go to Columbus, Ohio next year cold and try to figure it out. It won't quite be that. But the advantage that Quinn has is that he's gone through all of this. He's made his first Texas OU start. He's made his first start on the road and his first start at home and his first conference start and his first start on the road against a ranked team. There are all these firsts. Arch doesn't have those yet. He literally has none. He hasn't even made his first start at home yet. Quinn's knocked all of this stuff out, and it is the experience edge that later in the year when this team gets close to the playoffs or an SEC championship, you'll want to lean on that Quinn experience so hard. Because next year you won't have it with Arch. He will have to do all of this stuff the first time. We don't think he probably is not starting in the Texas OU game this year. So next year it'll be his first start. And every time a guy does one of those things, you have to at least stop and acknowledge, like, okay, we think we know what might happen in this game, but because he's never done it, we know. Whereas when you talk about Quinn Ewers, if I told you tomorrow that Texas has to go on the road at Ohio State, we'd say, well, look, we've seen it in Tuscaloosa and Ann Arbor. We know what Arch will bring to or what Quinn will bring to the table. It's the difference between those two guys right now. But I don't know if it's talent. I think it's all about experience, all about lived experience. And Quinn just has a massive edge right there. And you'd be naive as a Texas supporter or a coach for that matter. And I don't think the coaches are thinking like this, but you'd be naive to think that that doesn't matter, that, that if forced to choose between the two, you'd rather go inexperienced versus experienced at this point. I think the talent is so thin between the two that Quinn's biggest advantage is the one thing that can't be trumped. He has the experience advantage, and that might be the most valuable of the advantages that a guy can have. You'd rather have that than, well, Arch is a little more athletic. Well, I don't know. He ain't so athletic that if they played at Ohio State, he's running away from Ohio State linebackers. No offense to anybody on that UTSA defense, but you're not that. You're not future NFL athlete good. So, I
can tell you this much. I didn't see anybody in that UTSA defense that anybody's going to want in the portal come December. I can tell you that much. Yeah, I'm just saying. All right, Catch. We got three super chats. Let's knock these out real quick. Barb's 10. Just going in his own direction, what his thoughts are. The defense, he's like, to hell what you guys are talking about. I want to talk about this. Defense must get greater than 4 sacks versus lob and row or pressure and front seven is not progressing. The defense and the DB's tackling in space is refreshing to see. So that's what Barb's thought is. Catch, Jay Lee comes in. where would Arch be taken in the draft? Let's say, I guess he means does it mean this year, 2024? It means probably
If he
2025.
was draft eligible, there's no NFL team that would pass on Arch Manning. They would realize that it might take, it'd be, well, we can't start him. You can't do what you just did with Caleb Williams. But, if this was like Major League Baseball draft and you're drafting for the guy that you think will ultimately be the best player, and if that's 4 years away, that's 4 years away, Arch Manning would be the number one draft pick. No doubt in my mind.
Catch, from a financial standpoint, you would make him your number one draft pick because, ticket sales would go through the roof. Merchandising would go through the roof. Like, at the end of these days, these teams do want to win, but these owners want to make money. So at the end of the day, having a Manning makes me money. I don't give a damn. You think it's going to be an owner that says, well, so you won't be able to play for 2 years, but I can make a boatload of money in the interim?
There's no player in college football right now. That's the other thing. There's no Caleb Williams that's currently in the sport that is such an obvious potential number one guy. And that guy doesn't exist. I'm not taking Shedeur Sanders over Arch Manning. I'm not taking Carson Beck over Arch Manning. I'm not taking Jackson Dart or anybody else that you want to throw out there. You could make a case that Texas has the top 2 NFL draft quarterbacks on the same roster. I will absolutely listen to, if you take Arch Manning out of the discussion, might Quinn be the top guy over everybody else that's left? Maybe, although there are going to be some NFL teams that just wonder, is Quinn Ewers going to be able to withstand the beating? I mean, physically, this is a situation where now I wonder if Sark will admit that there was an issue before the game, or how he'll discuss someone's going to say, do you know how and when this happened? It appears that the writer.
Yeah, you've heard this media corps before. No one's going to say that. You're
right.
No, don't give him that much credit. Don't give him that much. Everybody's gonna come in with their one prepared question for that one thing that they're going on, and it ain't gonna be, so coach, can you give me an idea when this injury occurred? It's going to be okay. It's gonna.
You're right. You're right. When you're right, you're right. You're right, Anwar. I take it all back. Real quick to Barb's question. I don't want to put a number on that, Barb's, where like they have to have 4 sacks or the pass rush isn't like coming on the way that it needs to be. Dude, Colin Simmons is playing more and more and more. The pass rush is getting better by default. The more 11 plays, the pass rush is getting better. So, I would think of it like that. Is it where you want it to be as a fan? Probably not. They're not piling up the sack numbers yet. Is it getting better? Well, yeah, because 11's playing more. I'm just telling you, I think Colin Simmons, with all due respect to Anthony Hill, I think it's very possible that right now already Colin Simmons is the best player on that defense. He came on the field in the second quarter, Anwar, in a drive where UTSA was moving the ball down the field. They put 11 in the game, drive over. 3 consecutive plays. He chased a guy down from behind, mixing a quarterback pressure, a stuff in the backfield. Suddenly, UTSA is kicking a field goal instead of driving for something more than that. His presence on the field, more than any other Texas defensive player, changes the game. It's like, oh, watch out for 11. Wherever he is, whatever he's doing, he gets to the ball. He's coming with thunder when he gets there. And, again, this is what it looks like when a guy of that talent level, a national top 10 level prospect, starts to figure it out. I mean, by the end of the season, I think with him, we may be talking about, here's my hot take. End of the year, Colin Simmons will be the national freshman defensive player of the year.
Okay.
That's my overreaction on a Monday. That kid's got 9 regular season games left. If anybody's going to get close to double-digit sacks on this Texas team, it's going to be the guy that currently leads them in tackles for loss, sacks, and quarterback hits. He's been a part-time player, and yet he leads the program in all 3 of those categories, and those numbers will only go up as he gets more playing time. And I'm telling you, Steve Sarkeesian's an offensive coach. This is what his defensive meetings sound like today. He walks over to the defensive meetings, and it's like, all right, so what are y'all doing to get Colin on the field more this week? Because I want his ass on the field all the time when we play Oklahoma and Georgia. Figure it out, guys. Figure it out. But 11, by the time those games come around, 11 best not be coming off the field for Justice Finkley or anybody else. And that actually kind of includes Trey Moore. Trey Moore is a good player. He's not more talented than Colin Simmons.
Tom G came back with another super chat. He goes, can we all agree now that Mike Farrell sucks ass on QB evaluations? 3-star, if not for the name. Dude needs to find a new job. Farrell was kind of a big Manning hater for a minute, though.
Here's the thing, though. Well, if he wasn't a Manning, he is, though. You can't separate. You can't say, well, if he didn't have all of that lived experience of being a guy in a family that holds a quarterback camp every summer, and his uncles have won Super Bowls, and his dad was a former college player. Like, you can't do that. Like, there's no world where you get to extrapolate that from the makeup of Arch Manning. Well, if he was, he is, though. You know, it's like, oh, well, if I didn't live in Austin, Texas for most of my life, I wouldn't own Orange Bloods. But I did. I lived in Austin. I went to UT. I was around. If Ketch wasn't around for the start of the internet, he wouldn't even, but I was. You don't get to take away the most important factors that make a guy what he is. And for Arch, he's a Manning. He has spent all of that time in his life talking football with the best that have ever played, with the most insightful family experience a guy could have. It would be like if Barry Bonds had a kid. It was like, oh, well, you know, if he didn't grow up with Barry Bonds teaching him how to hit a baseball, well, but he would have. He would have had that guy. Like, sometimes your advantages are your advantages. Sometimes your advantages, you grow up in an environment where you have some wealth, so you can afford coaches and camps and private instructors as well. If you didn't have all, but he does, but a guy sometimes does. They have those experiences where Mike's point is just meaningless. Is that there's no universe where you get to take that away from Arch and say, okay, kid, live without all of these advantages. No, he's always going to be that guy with all of those advantages, and they matter. And you know, I think it was a foolish thing to say because it'll always be held against Mike.
He said if his name was Arch Smith, I think he'd probably be a high 3-star quarterback, what he said on some show called Crane and Company. It will be the thing that, you know, he goes, when he's had to step up against other competition, especially in the playoff game where he looked awful, just hasn't translated. Every time I watch other quarterbacks in this class, it knocks Arch down in my head. That will be on your tombstone when it's all said and done. You're going to have to own that. And that's going to be the thing when Arch is about to get drafted. They're going to say, you remember this in high school? And be like, yeah, you know, like it will be the thing that.
Well, maybe it's good that Mike said that, because if not for him talking about Arch, the thing that we would all remember is what he said about Mahomes on draft day, which was that the Chiefs just wasted a draft pick. And then Mahomes essentially sucks. So, Mike, stop commenting on these quarterbacks, man.
Yeah, you might want to stick to your whatever your wheelhouse is, because that doesn't appear to be it. Catch, we are all caught up on our super chats at this moment. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. Anything else you want to close with as we head on out?
I think the thing again, and we could probably go through it if we had a little bit more time. The advantage that Texas has right now is that it has the best quarterback room in the country. And we said that before Saturday night. We've been saying that all season long. But you wonder, like, well, what does that mean? Because, you know, you could have just the best quarterback in the country, and then you'd have the best quarterback room. Texas, I think, right now has two quarterbacks that can start for top 5 teams in the country. That outside of a very small number of schools, Arch Manning starts for all of them. I can remember when we would do shows in the summer with Chad on House Divided, and I would say, Chad, you can have Connor Wigman or Arch Manning as your starting quarterback today. This is during the summer, back when people were talking about Wigman being a potential first-round draft pick. And it was like, who would you take as your starting quarterback today if you could? And Chad would go, oh, give me Arch. I'd love to live the Arch experience. Let's do that. Texas is in a position where you might, because I think if Arch gets the next 2 games, if he starts Mississippi State, I think when Quinn comes back, the nation's leading passer in passing efficiency will be Arch Manning. 2 more games
how about this?
will qualify him.
That's true. Hey, real quick, can I just show you this real fast? It's funny you say that. How about this? Our producer Tyler put this together. You just want to talk about efficiency and everything on that. He did a QB rating of him, Arch, and Jackson Arnold. What do you think about that?
I mean, Arch is better than Jackson Arnold. There's not an Oklahoma fan on earth right now. If they tell you otherwise, they literally don't know what they're talking about. They would trade Jackson Arnold for Arch Manning. Arch is better. Arch is going to be better. They don't even know whether or not Jackson Arnold is going to be the starting quarterback next year. Like, they think he is, but he has not been good enough that you absolutely give him the benefit of the doubt. I think if you could take one, you would take Arch, and the numbers there tell a story. We could do this with all of the teams in the top 10. As a matter of fact, look, onward. Let's just do it real quick. Last thing we do before we go. Let me pull up the rankings. I'm going to go to the AP top 10. By the way, guys, do go to rogueshop.com. We love them as a sponsor. Richard and Shar are absolutely 2 of the best people I know, and they do such a great job of running that shop. They're Longhorns through and through. Like Richard cares. So keep it. If you're looking to buy your legal CBD, THC, go to Rogue Shop. They'll get it to you amazingly packaged, and you'll be keeping it in the Orange Bloods family, so to speak. All right, so.
And that's why we got 2 more super chats that's come in, Catch.
So just real quickly, Georgia, Carson Beck or Arch Manning?
I'd take Arch.
It's Arch all day long.
Yeah, especially after that Kentucky performance. Yeah, of course.
Ohio State. You taking the K-State transfer or you taking Arch?
Arch.
Now, Alabama with Jalen Milroe, I would say Alabama would keep the guy they have right now.
It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting what the board did, because the board would I didn't recruit you, so if all things were equal, I don't know. Like, Milroe ain't throwing the ball.
Coming off of a Heisman finalist season.
I get it. So sure, I'll say yes.
Ole Miss is an interesting one because Jackson Dart is a Heisman candidate, but Arch is Ole Miss led like his old man's Arch.
I don't think Lane is like, you know what?
Lane would kick Jackson Dart to the curb
so quickly.
He's like, look, man, I got fired in an airport once. You don't think I can just kick you off a bus? Tennessee, Nico is a really good player, but I think they'd go Arch. Same at Missouri. I think if Miami had a choice before the season, Cam Ward or Arch Manning, I think they would go Arch. But I think right now they would keep their guy. Oregon would trade Dylan Gabriel for Arch Manning. Penn State would certainly do it. Every team after that, every single team after that trades their quarterback for Arch Manning.
Except Colorado.
No, man. Dion would trade his son.
He would not trade his son.
He would trade his son.
He wouldn't. No.
He'd start calling Arch son. Son, come here. Come here, son. You know, I've had multiple kids. Shador's just one of my sons. But you know what? You're right to a certain extent, except Colorado's not in the top 25.
Sure,
so they were out of sight, out of mind. I was just looking at the teams that are actually ranked. So other than Alabama, Miami, and maybe Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, you can't count 5 schools in America right now that would take their quarterback over Arch Manning. That's the thing that I would stress home to Texas fans. It's okay to be excited about Quinn. You actually have 2 guys who are nationally elite. Quinn might be number 1 on the list. At worst, he's 2 or 3, but Arch is not far behind. He starts for every ranked team in the country except for less than a handful. And, you know, when we have this discussion, I think that's the thing, the context that we need to understand. He's really, really talented. He's really, really good. And that's better than most of the quarterbacks across college football. Because I watched a bunch of games. This will be my final thought on War. I watched a bunch of games this weekend where if either team had Arch Manning, they win their game going away. If Arch Manning was the quarterback at Tulane, they beat Oklahoma this weekend. If, you know, pick any of the games that I watched, there were so many close games with such average quarterback play. If Arch Manning is the starting quarterback on almost, if South Carolina has Arch Manning as its quarterback, they beat LSU this weekend.
They beat the refs and LSU.
You know why? Because the refs would favor an Arch Manning-led team.
Yeah.
Those bad calls aren't going against the Manning family. Let me tell you that right now.
All of a sudden, all of South Carolina's turnovers are like, okay, I guess you can have that. Okay, now they're probably not just going to call back every time you score on
Exactly.
defense.
We're not throwing a flag. You know what? Incomplete pass. I saw that guy roll to the ground and drop the ball, and I was like, oh, that's an incomplete pass. It wasn't.
2 more. How does the number 1 ranking impact this team, if at all, Catch?
I think it gives them a jolt. I think this could be a week where you might expect a little bit of a letdown. If it were me, if I were a player on the number 1 ranked team, man, that would make me want to get on the field and play. So now you could make a case that having the number 1 ranking, you know, we've seen it be a distraction for teams, but a lot of times it's a distraction because you're also coming off of a big win. Usually when a team gets a number 1 ranking and it's new and it's in the mid-season, you've won a big game, and it's a little bit different than they're coming off of UTSA. They have a quarterback injury. So I think Sark will demand a performance. Look, it puts a target on their back, but Texas was already going to have it. Do you think Oklahoma could put any more of a target on Texas than they already do?
Yeah.
Look, Georgia and Texas have both been looking forward to that game. Everybody knows that could be 1 versus 2. I don't know that the order matters a lot, so I don't think it's going to have a big impact. I think to a lesser team, maybe. But this Texas team is really freaking good. It's better than last year's team. And I didn't think I would be saying that this early in the season. I thought it might get there at the end of the year, but it's better. It's a better team. It's better on defense. I don't know if they're quite better on offense, but they're not far away if they are. I mean, you know, Gunnar Helm looks like he could be as good as Jatavian Sanders. That wide receiver unit might not quite have the top 2 guys. They may not. I don't know that I think Isaiah Bond's better than either Adonai Mitchell or Xavier Worthy. But the totality of that position group, the backups come in and it's like, oh, great. Can you imagine if you're UTSA and you're like, well, they're taking the starters out. And it's like, well, no, you don't know what that means. Because in comes Ryan Wingo, in comes Jonte Cook, in comes Silas Bolden. And it's like, does it ever stop?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Why is this 11 guy playing more? That guy should be with the starters.
Poor Jeff Traylor's like, I can't get one of these guys in my program. Like, damn. But, you know, and you got to think, like, catch it. This is why I think it doesn't impact this team at all. It actually plays exactly off of what you were saying, was what I was thinking in my head. It doesn't impact it because you got so many guys who are good, who are trying to get on the field right now. Like, you can't, as a starter, you can't be that person who's like, man, I'm chilling, man. I'm just popping bottles this weekend. I'm showing up drunk to practice. Like, I don't give two F's about. You will be on the bench, and Sark will have a guy who's just as good as you, if not better, to replace you. There's too much competition for everybody just to act like, yo, we're good. Because you got too many other guys. Catch, if I'm the guy who's the third string guy, I'm like, yeah, go ahead and pop those bottles, man. Go ahead and celebrate being number one, because the moment you do that, I'm going to get your job, and I'm going to finally get on the field. So
I promise you, Matthew Golden shows up to practice today and is like, let's go to work, guys. You're not getting a bad day for me, because he knows that Ryan Wingo is knocking on the door.
Speaking of Tom G, back again. He goes with Arch, Wingo, and Cook are his top two wide receivers as it appears. He goes, I think Cook should be starting, in my opinion. He's just too explosive to keep off the field.
I don't know that Wingo and Cook are the top two. I think Arch seems to like Isaiah Bond just fine. And if he didn't, he did a lot more after Saturday. He was like, oh, I can just throw it to this guy and he'll run the whole way. That works too. Look, Isaiah Bond is the number one wide receiver on this team. I don't disagree, though, that they got a bunch of dudes that are starting level wide receivers. And I don't want to be dismissive of Matthew Golden, who the coaches see a lot more than I do on a daily basis. But you could see why Jonte Cook was a 5-star on Saturday. It was like, oh, that guy can do that. Okay. And then consequently, Ryan Wingo, every time he touches the ball, honestly, the thing I think about, Ryan Wingo went to an all-star game setting last year and practiced 3 or 4 days and was in the game. And the general consensus was, this guy's not as good as these other players. I got to go look at what these other freshman receivers from the 2024 class are doing on the field. It's hard after seeing Ryan Wingo in 3 games for me to imagine, oh, yeah, no, there were like 8 receivers who were better than Ryan Wingo a year ago. Really? Really? Okay, if you say so, but it's hard to imagine that guy by the end of the year had stock that was cooling and all of the services dropped him based on their in-person evaluation of him in the All-Star game.
So dumb.
At some point, I need to go talk to the Rivals people and go, look, no matter what the hell happens this week in all-star game settings, Kelvin Banks, Ryan Wingo.
Exactly. Like, you can't judge them off of 1 week, just 1 week. And it's like, well, he didn't look like a 5-star to me this week. I guess we're going to go ahead and drop it. It is an ass backwards way of thinking, because I have preached this since I've gotten here in Orange Bloods, which is, if a guy has a quote unquote bad combine, do not buy into this thing of that person's stock is going to drop. That's not how the evaluation process works. It's one tool, it's one component in the evaluation process, but it's not the overall thing. Everyone's like, his stock rose because in the combine, his stock dropped. It's bullshit. That's not how it works.
No, but guys go to the Senior Bowl and they can improve their
Senior Bowl is different. I said senior.
The Senior Bowl is.
I said combine though.
But the all-star game settings aren't combines.
But I'm talking about the totality of the evaluation process. You don't necessarily just do it off of one thing per se. Now, you're talking about the Senior Bowl. That's an entire week of certain things.
But that's what these All-America Bowls are.
But they
It's
still
a
go
week
back
of
to
practice.
the film, though. They still go back to the film.
Well,
The film is what you ultimately judge somebody on more so than anything else.
I don't dislike the evaluation process. I'm just saying, be careful, guys. Don't work it into your head that a guy's a 5-star and then convince yourself that a couple of days of practice completely changes that. Because what happened to Wingo is he went to an all-star game setting and everybody at all the services showed up and said, well, we each have like 10 wide receivers who are all ranked in the top, let's say 40 in the country. So we'll figure out who should be ordered in what order based on what we see this week. And it's like, well, no, like all kinds of mitigating circumstances would make it, and it would be the same of the Senior Bowl, right? Well, the guy didn't perform all that well, he had a cold, or they were doing some different things with him, and it was a new scheme than what he had been. There's all kinds of mitigating circumstances. Don't make it completely wipe out what you've been telling yourself for 2.5, 3 years prior to that. All right.
The biggest difference I would say between the two is that for the Senior Bowl, I'm playing for money. For these rivals things, I'm basically just kind of doing it for an extracurricular activity and maybe a ranking.
That's a great point. That not all of these guys show up realizing, hey man, if you don't treat this as serious as a heart attack, your ranking might fall. These guys show up and it's like, hey, I get to be in Fort Lauderdale for a week. Like, let's have some fun.
Correct. And they ain't thinking like, and so I already got my offers. This doesn't affect my offers. So that would be I would say the biggest difference.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I was just saying it's more like the Senior Bowl week than the combine because it's on-field, man-on-man drills. But, sometimes that stuff can be misleading. Clearly, two of the best players on this Texas football team got dinged for this very thing when in retrospect, one's definitely going to be a first-round draft pick, and the other could absolutely end up that way. It's too early to know exactly what Ryan Wingo's going to become, but he certainly looks like a guy that could be that kind of guy. Anwar, before you head on out to DKR for Steve Sarkeesian's Monday press availability, any last comment?
Man, look. It's good. It's good to be on top. It's good to do shows like this, Catch. I feel like we are finally reaping the rewards of shows that we've been doing for years. It's props to everybody. Congrats to everybody who just started their YouTube channels and started doing shows like over the last 2 years. I'm glad you're enjoying this because before the YouTube stuff, Catch and I were doing shows on other platforms since 2015, and we've had some really lean years. We've had to do shows every week. I can't tell you how many thousands of shows Catch and I have done. So I'm glad, Catch, that you and I actually get to do good, positive shows where no one can say we're being negative.
Well, it was less than 3 years ago that Xavier Worthy stopped doing NIL videos with us because in the middle of a 5-game losing streak, his mom was like, man, it's just too negative. And it's like, we can't stop losing games. Stop losing games.
Now, Catch, we could probably do those NIL deals and people would actually watch the videos and care because this team is actually really good as opposed to before. They're like, man, I don't care what Keandre got to say.
Jake Majors walking around like, I don't know if I can do a video because if I do a video, people are going to think I'm not focused on football. Like,
oh man, it's so bad.
We say it's been less than 3 years. It is, as Texas enjoy the number 1 ranking and realize less than 3 years ago, 5 and 7 happened. It is one of the great coaching and jobs and program turnarounds that we are watching Steve Sarkeesian build and embrace it, love it, enjoy it. These are the best of times. And if you don't believe that, just go back a couple of years and realize there were some worst of times as well.
Yeah, he said, hey, I don't believe there's no question you could ask Sark today to make him mad at you today. Overall, I think he's probably right. I think Sark's going to be in a good mood. As long as I don't ask him like, hey, so about your pass rush, that could be a little bit better, right? Do you need Colin Simmons to be the guy that some of these guys aren't? Like that might irritate him a little bit.
I think if you asked him, hey, Sark, I know you know the Overreaction Monday show. We did it earlier today. One of the things that came up was whether or not Arch would start at Ohio State, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Miami. Any thoughts on whether or not Arch would start for either of those 4 schools if he were at those 4 schools? I'll just sit back and listen.
That would irritate him. There are ways to irritate him, and we do know, Catch. We know not now because the team is so good. They'd be like, "Why'd you ask such a bad question on War?" You know, it would be like that more than anything else.
All right, guys, do us a solid. Like, subscribe, comment on the page. It's never too late to get those comments in. Thanks to everybody that jumped into the Specs chat. We got more work to do. It's a Monday. The work never stops. House divided in less than 2 hours. Sark in about an hour-ish. Yeah. It's at 11:30, right? So
I got to roll.
Onwards got to roll. Guys, thumbs up button. We do appreciate it. Until our next show in less than 2 hours, you be good. Go back and watch the post-game show. That was entertaining on